Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. We were trying something new this week, and it seemed to have worked. Apparently, this new StreamYard thing has intros that automatically play immediately, and I didn't muck it up. And I'm so happy. I'm so impressed. Like, yay! So hopefully, this is something exciting for us. How are you guys doing? Welcome. It's good to see you guys. Welcome to everybody that's watching, I mean, but welcome. Hello to you guys.
Yeah, I want to be welcome too. Geez.
Well, welcome, Trevor.
Thank you. It's the little things in life that make it, worth it.
Exactly.
Finding a new button on StreamYard and then, being welcome to your own show. It's good. It's good.
It's amazing, right? It's kind of like, yay, my Sunday's complete.
Mm-hmm.
So, how's everyone?
Yeah, so things are going good here in Idaho. We're staying super busy with Western Idaho Paranormal. We've got we've pretty much sold out of our October haunt at the University Inn in Gooding. So that's pretty exciting. So that's definitely a lot better than we did the first time around. So of course, I'm getting ready to head out to the woods and do some hunting for a few weeks, and so I don't get to go to that. So hopefully they don't burn the place down while I'm out there. But yeah, I'm confident. I'm confident it'll go well. So I've got good people running things up there. So
it will go great. It will go great. How are you doing, Lynda?
I'm doing well. And like you, Trevor, like all of our Halloween events are selling out, which is fantastic. I'm excited about that. Yeah, we just started actually doing some Halloween events. We do stuff at the Old Town Hall in Newmarket, which is a bit south of us. And so far, so good. I love this season anyway. And I love the weather because it's getting nice and cool, which means it's sweater weather and it's the best thing ever. So I'm pretty excited about it.
That's so good. That's so good. I'll tell you what I'm excited about. I'm excited about our guest this week. Yes. So we have our guest is Lynn Monet. She is an author. She is an empath. She is a death doula. She is, I'm just going to bring her on and we're going to introduce her, let her introduce herself. And I'm excited to talk to her. How you doing, Lynn?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I was really looking forward to being on here with you guys tonight.
I just wanted to switch you around there. Yeah, we're really looking forward to having you too. I can't talk today. I think I've been around too many chemicals. I told you earlier that I've been scrubbing my basement and stuff like that. So I'm going to wait.
Is that stuff legal in Canada? I mean, I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Not those chemicals, but
not those chemicals. Oh, okay.
Yeah, not those chemicals, my dear. But Lynn,
Lynn, I need to ask you, what is talking over us?
I'm sorry.
I got some buggy internet today. I apologize. So, Lynn, what do you know what a death doula is? I don't know what that is.
I'm sorry.
I think you're saying that. What is a death doula? And
it's kind of like a midwife is bringing in a baby. A death doula is like a midwife that helps people exit. That's what it is. So it's more encompassing than that. We involve the family and of course take care of their needs. And it's a little bit more than hospice. We're not just there giving the drugs and things like that. We're there doing the spiritual part of it. So being an empath, it is getting to see the loved ones coming in to collect them, and of which I've seen other things come in too, but getting to, so that I know where the person is in the process to help them have comfort and know that it's okay, to go. So it's a very, very beautiful thing. I've gotten to see so many beautiful things in the interim of doing that, as well as to feel the love and elation that comes from the other side. I mean, there are not words that can explain it or a feeling that can touch it. It is. And I feel so much gratitude being able to engage with people during that time, and also getting to overhear some messages from the other side that when they go through that rallying stage and they come back and they start talking about babies that haven't been born and seeing their loved ones. You know, so many times people don't realize that during that time of transition, it's also a time when the filters start to efface. So the person transitioning can hear the telepathy and that communication from the other side, as well as hearing the speech in the physical form, that a person sitting in the room is also able to communicate with the other side. And they don't realize it, that they miss out on that because they're usually in a state of grieving. So they don't realize that they can ask Uncle Bob, if Uncle Bob is attending the person transitioning, where the clock is, and he'll be able to respond through the person that is actively transitioning. So there's a lot of things that people don't realize if they could get past their grief, and they get to engage not only with the person transitioning, but loved ones that have already crossed over.
Wow. Yeah,
So
that's what in like for somebody to be able to have the ability to do that, but also just to, I mean, obviously death is definitely, just in my own experience, like in 2021, I lost my mom and my dad immediately right after each other. My son lost his best friend like just a couple of months later, and then we just recently lost a nephew. It's been like, so you get to that point where you're like, you're not focused in on, maybe you're focused in on death, but the wrong part of it. You know what I mean? And so to have that ability to be able to be there for people during their last moments, it's just, for me, I look at that as such, it's just so noble, like of you to be able to do that. It's just so, like, I'm in awe of you to be able to do it.
Well, thank you. But it's such an honor for me because I get to see the angels. I've even seen other things. So anybody that's of the mind of the alien set, there are also beings there that are from somewhere else that I've seen. So I've been able to engage in that and hopefully bring comfort. I've written a book called Colors of Heaven, Beginnings Never End, based on my experiences. I have been a nurse for 40 years. 18 of that has been in end-of-life care. And I wrote the book to help take the stigma of death and dying because, there's such a finality to death, and people don't realize that this is not the last time they're going to see their loved one. They will see them again. So if you can kind of switch your mindset a little bit and not see it as an ending, but a beginning for them, and that you'll catch up with them, down the road, then it takes on, more of a joyous occasion versus something that some people, they get so stuck in their grief that they're in their grief for the rest of their life. And that kind of anchors them and holds them in a little bit of a negative field. So, if they could just look at it, and not only that, but, a lot of times too, people with the medical field, if anything is different, like if a person starts talking about seeing their loved ones before they pass away or whatever, they run to get the medicine. Everything's with the medicine. If somebody starts hearing voices medically, mentally, they run to get the medicine. They don't investigate to see if there's any, reality to it. And I've had examples of things that have occurred that cannot be denied medically. I had a lady that was blind. I'll be happy to share that story with you if you like. Okay.
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I had a lady, her name was Edna, and she had been on I worked in a skilled unit of levels of care from independent, dependent, and then skilled. And I was in the skilled, the last place they usually end up, or if they end up there for after surgeries to recover and things like that. But I had a patient that had been on my unit for about 2 weeks, and her name was Edna, and she was totally blind. This lady she couldn't see shadows, any kind of figures, nothing. She had been blind for 10 years. And her son and daughter, they come to the nurse's station and they say to me, "Mom's talking to people in the room that aren't there." Well, of course, I expected that, but I needed to I knew that Edna was fine, I just needed to comfort them because they were obviously uncomfortable with it. So I said, well, let me walk down to your mama's room with you and let me see if I can adjust her pillow or help her get something to make her feel more comfortable. And I walked down, and Edna's sitting at a slant, and they're always sitting at a slant with their oxygen on. And she's reaching up into the air as if she's being handed something very, very precious and delicate, because she was being so careful, and she's smiling. And I said to her, I said, Edna, I said, who's here? And she says, George. And her daughter had turned as white as a sheet, and she had to sit down because she said, well, George is my father. And then Edna pipes up and she says, well, and he's glad that you're taking good care of Pixie. Pixie was Edna's poodle. When George passed away, the son had to take possession of Pixie the poodle because Edna, being blind, could no longer care for the dog. And it just so happened that Pixie was still alive, an elderly dog, but was still very much alive. And the son still had, the dog. And he said to me, he said, do you think my mom's hallucinating? And of course, as a medical professional, I can't say, no, I think that your dad is here helping her get used to, to help her transition over. Mm-hmm. So I always put it back on them. I said, well, do you think that she's hallucinating? And he's like, well, I don't know. And I said, I'm not trying to change your belief system, but I've been in this profession for a long time. And it's common for them to talk about seeing loved ones coming in at their time when they get closer to crossing. I said, do you mind if I try something? And he said, no. And I said, Edna, can I ask George a question? And she nodded her head yes. And I said, what color is your son's shirt? And Edna said, yellow. He was wearing a yellow Ralph Lauren polo shirt. Now, there is no way in hell that she could have seen the color of that shirt because she was totally blind. George had to tell her. George told her what color the shirt was. So in that moment, the son got it. And he says, hi, Dad. He then acknowledged the fact that he had to have been there. It was impossible. And not only that, even medically, how does a blind person hallucinate? They can't see anything. It's impossible for them to hallucinate. So when medically, when they talk about people getting ready to, transition over, when they start talking about seeing their parents, sometimes even a year in advance, they'll run and they'll get the meds, they'll get the Seroquel and stuff. And I mean, I have a lot of examples of things like that, of where people had the wherewithal to know that they were being medicated for seeing things, but yet they were still seeing things because they weren't hallucinations. They were very real to them. Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow.
But that's one of many. I have lots of those stories. I'll be happy to share whichever ones you want. So
we're happy to listen. I'm not gonna lie. We are here to listen. Yeah. When I guess, how did you get into that? What was the beginning of this for you, or how did this begin? Or was there something that kind of brought you to that place of like, holy, this is what's going on, or this is what's happening, or whatever it is?
Yeah, I've had gifts ever since I was very little. When I grew up, we lived 3 short blocks behind a hospital that was connected to I'm going to be 61 in May, so I was born in the 60s. So back then they called those nursing homes, nursing homes instead of skilled facilities. So it was side by side connected with one of those, and it was commonplace for my siblings and I to see people in patient gowns walking through our house, and Indians, because there were Indian mounds on the opposite side of the hospital. Right. So to us, it was so commonplace that it was like, oh, well, there's a toaster, there's a door, there's a dead person. It was normal for us. And the thing is back in the 60s, that's just not something you talked about, because they would literally send the men in white coats to your house and take you away to perform a lobotomy. You know what I'm saying? So that was kind of something that was kept quiet in the house, and it wasn't overly supported, but it wasn't denied. But there was for instance, that happened with my brother and I. I was 5 years old. I was in my parents' bedroom, My brother was in there too. And of course I was in my mother's jewelry box, making myself very glamorous. And my brother was on the terrazzo floor playing with his cars. And all of a sudden I turned to show my brother, who's 7, how glamorous I had made myself. And he's fixated on the corner of the wall in the room. And so I turned to look to see what he's looking at. And there was this misting in the corner, which since I've learned is an ectoplasmic portal. But of course, back then it was just misting like a cloud. And all of a sudden, my brother's best friend, John, stepped in, the mother, the father, and the brother of his friend. And they were just standing there smiling at us. And of course, my brother got up and ran out of the room in one direction. I ran out of the room in the other direction looking for my mom. And I hear my brother finding my mom in the laundry room. And he says, Mom, John's here and his family. And my mom's like, I didn't even hear anybody knock. You know, he says, and they're in your bedroom. And she's like, they're in my bedroom. Who let them in my bedroom? So of course she's straightening herself and running, you know, trying to get into the bedroom to usher these people out of her bedroom, you know, that had come into the house. And of course, when she got into the bedroom, there was nothing there. And my brother got in trouble and I kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to get in trouble too, even though we had both seen it at the same time. But the thing is that the very next day was the first day after spring break. So the kids had been off for a week. My brother was on the bus going to school and John was not on the bus with him. They normally would sit side by side in the bus, and they also had the same classroom together and their desks were pushed together with chairs. And he wasn't present that day either. And after they said the Pledge of Allegiance, the teacher stood up in front of the class and said that John would not be returning to school because he and his entire family perished in an auto accident. And it happened that day, the day that we saw him in the misting. So it was like he was coming to say goodbye. So I've always had gifts. When I was about 10 years old, I was born and raised Presbyterian. My mother took a jaunt with the Jehovah's Witnesses, which is a book within itself, but we will not go there. But with that being said, being 10 years old and being in that religion and still seeing things, I was brought in front of the elders of the church at 10 years old, and I was petrified. I'm in this room with all of these men sitting around me telling me that I'm possessed. What I'm seeing is demons. That I'm going to die in Armageddon. I mean, all of these horrible, horrible things that I became very, very afraid of my gifts, to the point that I still saw things, but I would be like, ooh, it's a ghost. And I would run out of the room because I thought they were all demons. Even if it was my great grandmother, you know, somebody familiar, I'm like, ooh, that's a demon. And I would run out of the room just as fast as anybody else. So as things progressed forward, as a single mother, I had purchased a home, which was the first book of Omnipresent. This is actually an event that occurred in the house. My son was sitting on the master bathroom toilet and saw this coming in at him. It's a blessing he was sitting on the toilet. But anyway, when I was involved with that with my 2 kids, I was able to connect with people of like mind. And then that made me realize that I wasn't, you know, such a weirdo. And I was able then to connect, and then everything started to flourish and blossom from that point. That house, Omnipresent, that I had made mention, was a house that I bought as a single mom, and I never moved into it. It was that badly haunted.
Wow.
There were actually 2 demons, and you know, a lot of times, which I'm sure you guys find too, you'll get people that call you up and say, "I've got a demon in my house." And 99% of the time, it's not a demon. It's a disembodied soul, or, you know, something, an element, something else. It's all, you know, it's usually something else. It's very rarely demonic. But this one actually had 2 demons and a young man that had hung himself in the house. And the one thing that I've learned is that it's not about the age of the house. It's about the age of the ground that it's built on. So it's a brand new house. Yeah, a brand new house can be haunted if it's built in the wrong place. And so I never moved in. I never moved into that house. I owned it for 8 months. I did sell it. And for anybody questioning it, yes, I did try to tell the people that I sold the house to that it was haunted, but they didn't want to hear it. So, you know, they ended up moving out 6 months later. So, yeah, and then from there it continues into a series. Omnipresent's going to end up being a series of 5 books. The first book talks about the house, the people getting clawed, the bite marks. I mean, had multiple denominations of religion in there to get the things out. Nobody was able to. So I left. I wasn't going to stay there as a mother. Especially a single mother, I couldn't imagine, having my children come to me in the middle of the night that there's something in their closet or under their bed, or even worse, in their bed. And it really was. So, I ended up selling the house. But after that, I was able to connect up with the people that sold me the house, which is then where this book comes in. And this is actually a picture of the house. If you can see that.
Okay. Yeah.
Nice house. Look in the window. You see the face?
Yeah, I got to go full screen. Oh, yeah, I see it. Yep.
You see it? That's one of the demons that lived there. I caught that by accident. I took that
Wow.
picture.
Yeah.
There's no shot. I didn't even know that it was there until after I saw, the picture enlarged on the computer. I'm like, oh my gosh, nice house. But I bought that house. And like I said, it was so haunted that I never moved in. I did contact the people that had sold me the house, found out all of the things that were occurring with their family and children. I mean, they had a child that was 4 and one that was 6, and they were telling me about how when they would go to school, they have them draw pictures of their houses and families, and there's always the house with this big giant flower next to it, and then the family. The flower is always bigger than the house. Kids are so funny. But but in their pictures, there would then be these black stick people on the other side. There were 3 of them. And when the teachers or the parents would ask, who is that? They would say, that's the monsters that live downstairs in our house. And the kids were ending up with unexplainable bruise marks, bite marks, claw marks. And the little girl would come up from the area downstairs, which is where they seem to hang out the most, and say, the monsters downstairs don't like me. She was even trying to play dolls and stuff and engage with them. And they were, being that terrible. And it turned out that the young man that had hung himself in the house was verified by the gentleman that lived next door, who was the only house on the street for 5 or 6 years, even before the road was paved. He was the very first house was there. 15 years later, the house was built next door to him, which was the house that I ended up buying. And the first family that built it, the father and mother were going through a divorce, and the son did, in fact, he had some problems, I think, with some drugs and things like that. They said he hung himself in the stairwell, and the mother came home and found him hanging there. So there was some activity, and I believe that the demonic presences caused the suicide, not that the suicide caused the demons, but they both kind of interplay with each other with the energy. So nevertheless, they were there. And like I said, I ended up not moving in, but I had some interesting things happen with this ability to have the gift of second sight. I went back to school later in life to further my nursing degree, and I did a rotation through. I had a psych class, and in the psych class, I had to go to facilities with mentally ill patients in order to meet my goals. And I started seeing attachments on people because of the gifts that I have, and I could tell the difference between the people who had, say, schizophrenia, because theirs had more of, and I don't have the picture here. I think I have the pictures in my book. Let me see if I can find it real quick. The attachments on people with schizophrenia were different than those with addiction. And yes, there are attachments on people with addiction too. Let me see here. Oh, that's one on the person with addiction. I don't have that picture with me, but anyway.
The other thing is that they have, I just wanted to bring it up to the audience, is that I put all of your contact down in like TikTok and everything. And on your TikTok, you actually talk about some of the attachments on this one particular young lady. And that's a really interesting story. So if anyone wants to listen to that, they can also go to your TikTok after the show. Not during the show.
Well, I mean, and I would even be happy to tell you about that story if you'd like me to.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Yeah. This young lady, she was in the intake area. There were 8 of us student nurses, and we were brought in, and there was a teacher with us. And it was embarrassing for me because the young woman approached. She looked to be in her very early 20s, like maybe 21 years old. She had very, very short hair. She was curvy, and her skin was very, very pasty and gray almost looking. And she came over and she pointed at our group and she said, she was pointing at me and she's like, "You can help me. I know you can." And of course, I'm kind of looking over my shoulder because, I wanted to be Lynn, the student nurse that day. I didn't want to be Lynn, the weirdo. So, and of course, there's all these people around me that aren't going to understand what I'm seeing. And so, which reminds me too, I want to tell you the lady about at the table too. I'm going to write that down so I don't forget because this is good too. But so we were then ushered out. The teacher came over and said, "Don't make eye contact." She ushered us into a different room. And then myself and another student nurse was then placed back into the intake area. And we literally had to sign papers that if we got hit with something or bitten or something thrown at us, that we couldn't hold the facility responsible, because this intake area was where they were getting their meds. They were getting evaluated. They were getting their meds all balanced and everything, and they weren't quite there yet. And they had these picnic tables that were bolted to the floor. So this nurse and I were sitting there doing our charting. We had patients, and the young lady comes over and sits down with us kind of backwards. So her feet are going out opposite. Ours are under the table. And she starts to tell us her story. And she starts to tell how when she was 10, that she started getting molested by the minister or whoever it was in her church. And her father, her mother got remarried, and the stepfather started raping her when she was 14. Oh. And then at 16, she ran away and she started satanic devil worship. And she realized that that wasn't the right thing to do either. But then she started hearing all of these voices, like 25 different voices, and they diagnosed her with schizophrenia. But the thing that was concerning me about her is that when she was sitting there, she had on a pair of shorts. She had on like a tube top with very thin spaghetti straps, so you could see her back and her midriff and her arms and her legs. And this poor woman is covered in claw marks. I mean, covered. They're coming out of her nose, out of her ear. She was telling me that there was one that had a very, very long fingernail that was clawing her on the inside of her female parts. And this institution was claiming that these were self-inflicted. And I'm looking at them, and from the angle, especially on her back area, where some of them were like between her shoulder blades, she would have had to have been a contortionist to do that to herself. She wouldn't have been able to reach. And I could tell that these were claw marks because of an incident that previously had happened in that house that I never moved into, to a best friend of mine while she was standing next to me to the kitchen, where she got clawed on her back and her stomach by a demon, a hell dog that had come into the room. And so I recognized them. They look like cat scratches. Sometimes there's one single one, sometimes there's three, but they have a distinct look, almost like chigger bites, because they almost have that stitched looking to them when they start to heal. Otherwise, they look like cat scratches. So as she's sitting there, she's then called away because they have modules that they do where they sit in groups and they talk about whatever. They have times where they see their psychiatrist or their social worker, or they have time on the phone, and they'd called her away to do one of these things. And as she got up to walk away, she got just a little bit of a distance away, and I'm looking at her, and from behind, it looked like over each shoulder, it looked like she had clustered grapes that were like the size of potatoes, but they were large enough and hanging down her back that it looked like they could have filled a standard size pillowcase, literally, over both. Now, some of the faces were inverted with the eyes on the bottom, and both of them had a formation of like a O look to their mouth, or kind of hanging open kind of look, but they were down her back, and they seemed to be attached at her shoulder with this almost horn-like vine-looking thing, twisted kind of like a grapevine, but more hollow, like a horn, because it had that tannish brown kind of hollowed look. And they attached it at the top of her shoulders and kind of clipped in underneath her armpit, but did not go all the way around. So they were raised up off of her shoulder on each side a little bit. And as she got up to walk away, I'm like, oh my God, that poor woman, she really is hearing 25 different voices. She's got attachments on her back, and that's what she's hearing. So When she came back a little while later, my patient was actually 2 doors down from her, and I saw when she came back, and I went and I knocked on her door frame, and I said, can I come in? And she said, yes. And I said, listen, what I'm about to tell you, if you repeat this to anybody, they're going to think that you're crazier, and they're going to keep you in here longer. I said, so I'm going to tell you, I believe that you're hearing 25 different voices because you have attachments on your back. And the thing is once the attachments are exposed, this disgruntled look started to come over her face because they become angry.
Right.
The little voices, they've had a good thing going, they're sucking off of this person's life.
They're found out.
Exactly. And she turned away from me quickly. And normally I would not have done this because I was under stress. I had some personal things going on in my life, and there is a preparation you have to do with these so that you don't take them home with you, but something just came over me, and I took my fingers and I went underneath those horn looking things, and I pulled away energetically, physically, but energetically. And all of these great things started to fall to the ground, and I started stomping them into the ground, trying to displace them and put them into the ground. And some of them rolled over by her bed. And all of a sudden she turns around quickly and she says to me, she said, it felt like you were pulling grass off my back. She didn't even know that I had just pulled them off. And I told her, I said, look, this is a temporary fix. When you get out of here, you need to go and find someone that can address the issues with attachments, that can help you get them off completely. I said, some of them rolled over by your bed. They could easily reattach to you, especially with the medication she was on, because that kind of medication your auric field is only this thick when you're on that kind of med. So you don't have the protection of the ability for them to bounce off, that most people would. So it actually puts them in more of a vulnerable situation, and they all pass attachments around in those places. But, so apparently she listened to what I said, because about a year later, I was in Walmart. I'm crouching down in the section where the candles are. I'm looking for some candles to burn. And there's these 2 women at the end of the aisle talking to one another. They're whispering to one another. And they keep looking at me, and I'm like, oh my God. So I'm looking at my shoe for toilet paper. I'm checking to see if my zipper's down or something, I'm like, oh my gosh. So then I overhear one of the ladies say to the other one, she says, I know that that's her. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe it's a fan. Maybe it's somebody that read one of my books and whatever. So the girl comes over and she said to me, she said, hi, do you remember me? And I mean, her face looked familiar to me, but she looked so different. She was pink and healthy looking. She had this beautiful little blonde bob. She had lost weight. And she said, you're the nurse that helped me. And I looked at her and I'm like, oh my gosh. She looked like a new person. She had life in her. Things were sucking her to the point that she was pasty and gray when I saw her before. And I said to her, oh my God. She said, I did what you said. She said, and I'm now not on any more of my medication except for a low dose of anti-anxiety medication is needed. And she was getting ready to go into her second year of dental hygienist school. She was active, so she got her life back, and to me that was such a treasure. But realizing that 90% of these people in there have attachments, because of things, that the traumas that have happened to them that leave what I call the cracks in their windshield with the auric fields, and they don't know how to protect themselves. They don't know about salt baths. They don't know about different things that you can do to protect yourself. So they're left open to these things that just absolutely feed off of them and create havoc in their lives, so that the creatures can feed off of the lush that it's created, because it's like their chocolate. They love the lush. So they create that, and the rippling effect that it creates into families too. So even into neighborhoods, they love it. That's their thing. So that's actually what happened with her. So it was a wonderful thing to know that she was able to get the help that she needed and was able to overcome that illness that she was diagnosed with, that she didn't really have.
Wow. That must have been quite the thing to walk away knowing how much you were able to give this woman back her existence, really.
You know,
That you were a part of that, you know?
Well, you know, I had no idea what the outcome would be. I just was glad they didn't follow me home. You know, I was like sweating bullets the rest of the day. I'm like, ooh, because, you know, I'm walking around and there's some of these things, these people with like the archonic type attachments with addiction. You know, some of them, they look like reptilian, sometimes with a reptilian type tail, like an alligator tail. Sometimes they have a human buttocks. Yeah, or the spiders with the willowy things, or the crabs. But when the spider wants the willowy things, you know, they'll hang out and try to touch on you as you pass by, and you're like dodging them, you know. So
yeah.
But you know, I didn't. So going home every day was a whole cleansing thing, because I could see the things and didn't want to follow me home. But I was so honored and grateful to have her to actually. It was a turning point for me, not being so much being able to see the attachments, because I see them on people even in the grocery store, but to see the result that somebody actually was able to overcome their attachments and live a normal life. That brought the warmth and gratitude to my heart, and I was just so thankful. You know, not to me. I was grateful to be a vessel to be used, you know, to help that person. But to see the outcome was, I mean, it brought tears to my eyes. I was so thrilled. I hugged her. I couldn't help myself. You know, I was so happy for her, you know, that she was able to overcome. So, you know, and a lot of people, they're not. They get pulled back in. So, and she didn't. She went on forward. So I'm glad that I was able to do that.
Kind of like you alluded to, there's not a lot of people that are willing to actually listen and take that step to actually, you know, hey, this is something different than what, you know, we think it is. You know, it never ceases to amaze me, the amount of stories I hear, especially about religious clergy and the naivety when it comes to dealing with things spiritual. You know, it's like, it's all bad, or, you know, it's your imagination. That's like, no, you literally believe this stuff and you don't understand it. It's kind of interesting. And, you know, I'm a firefighter paramedic professionally, you know, and, you know, I've seen the same, you know, I haven't seen what you have seen, but, you know, I've been in those situations where people are like, they're hearing voices and things, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, they're just crazy. Like, oh, maybe not, you know, it was kind of, you know, this, just, you know, that's always a hard part. It's like, I instantly want to start investigating these things, but I kind of got to move along, and, you know, that's
well, I have a feeling that you're going to start seeing more than you expect to see now, with a little bit of a different understanding. I mean, I've had, like I said, so many things happen when they are seeing people. They are there. They are there. I had a lady that I call Abigail in my book, and if you would like me to share that story with you, I'd be happy to. And this kind of brings home some of it too. She and her husband had come to the facility because he needed a higher level of care. They were both.
Let me just ask, which book is this in, Lynn? Just so people know.
Okay, this is in Colors of Heaven.
Okay,
this one. Which is the story about death and dying and afterlife. And the thing is too, is I put a self-help section in all of my books. So this actually walks you through everything from power of attorney to health power of attorney, what they are and how you can do it for free type thing, as well as a checklist for end of life directives and things like that to make sure that you aren't getting ripped off. So anyway,
and it's not a pop-up book, right? So it's no jump scares or anything like that.
Well,
you're ruining the surprise.
I couldn't help myself. You know me.
That's okay. Abigail, again, they had like no extended family. There were no sisters or brothers or aunts or nieces or nephews or anything. They were like it. And it just so happened that she fell and fractured her hip, and she was on my unit for a period of time. And I got to know her. We built up a rapport. She was just this vivacious, beautiful woman. And there was one day that I walked into her room. I worked weekends, a Baylor shift. I was a single mom, so I'd have Monday through Friday off home with my kids. And she said to me, she said, "Lynn, do you think I'm crazy?" And of course, I'd built a rapport with her. So I was teasing her and I said, define crazy. And she says, no, I mean crazy. And I'm like, well, no, of course not. Why would you even say something like that? And she said, well, I see my parents. She says, and it makes me happy. She said, and they want to now put me on a medication for hallucinations. And I don't want to stop seeing my parents. I know my parents have been gone for a long time, but when I see them, it makes me happy. So I told her, I said, well, as your advocate, first of all, you can, if you are in sound mind, and you are, I said, you can refuse to take it. I said, for one thing, they can't force you to take it. And the other thing is that you're going to be discharged tomorrow in the morning back home to your apartment. So you can kind of address that issue. I said, I'm not telling you not to follow the doctor's orders, but I'm telling you that you have the right to refuse if you want to. So she was very happy. She was discharged and went home. But then she ended up with a terminal illness. She was back on my unit, but like maybe 6 to 9 months later. And this time she was in an active decline. And when she came on the unit, she was now talking about seeing a woman that would come to her room with a little girl. And it got to the point, because she was sneaking cookies and cakes back from the dining room to be a hostess to give to the little girl and the woman when she would come to visit, that it was causing a bug problem in her room. And we had to kind of reroute her and stop her from doing that. So I worked midnights, and there was a day that a friend of mine needed to have a day off. So I volunteered to work in her place so she could take it off. And so it was a day shift for me. And so all of the residents had now been placed back into their rooms after lunch, and it was time for me to go down and do my treatment. So I'm pushing my treatment cart down the hallway, and as I'm passing Abigail's room, I'm noticing the doors open, and she's sitting in her recliner, and she's leaning forward with this piece of yellow butterscotch wrapped candy. And the way that her room was set up, it had this big picture window with one of those air conditioners underneath. And I say this to some people, because I'm sure there are going to be some people from other countries watching, like those American air conditioners in hotels, those big units underneath the windows. And she's sitting off to the side recliner. And if anybody else had passed by, it would have looked like she was trying to feed the air conditioner her butterscotch candy. But there was a woman and a little girl standing in front of her. And the way that I see ghosts is that out of my peripheral vision, I can see them as clear as I can see you. I can tell you eye color and everything if they're close enough to me. When they are in front of me at a distance, they kind of look more opaque, like what we would see ourselves when we're approaching, like if we're going into the mall at Penny's and they got this big plate glass window and we see our own reflection walking up, it kind of looks like that. But when they're close up to me, I'll see this waffling to the air, kind of like gas fumes or vapors coming off of a hot road, that it's energetic. For anybody that wants to take it from a scientific thing, energy can't be created or destroyed. It just changes. So I see the energy. So here's this woman standing with this little girl in front of her. The woman had very, very long black hair parted down the middle. She had on a white peasant blouse, a long denim skirt. The little girl stood in front of her. She had on this little light blue dress with a pinafore, little lacy socks, Mary Jane shoes, very cute, black hair, bangs, very pretty little girl. And I passed by and I'm thinking to myself, oh, wonderful. Abigail's got some visitors today, because she had no family, or anybody really to come see her except for friends that she knew. So I take about 4 or 5 steps forward past her door, and I'm like, wait a minute. I don't remember those people signing in at the nurse's station. And as Trevor can tell you, we have to have a head count in the building. So if the fire department or paramedics need to come in for an emergency, they need to know how many people are there to get them out of the building.
I'm glad you said people and not bodies. Thank you.
Yes, people. Well, yeah. So
that's a bad day.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So I stepped back and I knocked on her door frame, and she invited me in, and I walked in and there was nothing there. But I could see the waffling of the energy right next to me over here. And Abigail looks at me and she says, I want you to meet my friends. Isn't the little girl beautiful? And I said, oh, yes, she is. And Abigail just about flung forward out of her chair. She says, can you see them? And I'm like, Yes. And she said, don't tell anybody. They'll think you're crazy and they'll put you on medication. So here this woman is now on Seroquel and Buspar and all of these things to stop her from seeing these ghosts. And she was still seeing them because they weren't hallucinations. She was actually seeing them, and I could see them too. Which reminds me, I wanted to tell you too about, just to back up if it's okay, about the mental facility also. There was another, for instance, that we were in there. We went into this room in the mental facility, and that is in the second Omnipresent book, and the third one's coming out around Halloween. And there was this lady sitting at a round table with 4 chairs. And it was in an area that they explained that was kind of the area that was forgotten by family. Family didn't even really come to see them anymore. They would basically live out their life there because mom's crazy and she doesn't remember anybody. But this lady is sitting there and she's having this conversation with the 3 other chairs. Very, and the thing is it's like being on a telephone, and you can hear the conversation, but you can kind of get the idea of what the other people are responding with by her response. And she's like, oh, would you like some coffee? Would you like 1 lump or 2 kind of thing? Just the very, very polite hostess. And the nurse says, oh, that's so-and-so. And she's talking to people that aren't there. But I could clearly see that there was a spirit in every single one of those seats sitting with that lady. And of course I couldn't say anything because they would have admitted me, you know, so, but to see this reality, it's so heartbreaking in a sense that all of these people, they're being placed because they're gifted. They're empaths, they're psychic, they have abilities, and some of them are getting close to their end of life too, where they might be seeing people. But that lady was actually seeing people. I could see the people. So, it just, and that was, like I mentioned, that was part of the mental facility in this book. As I had mentioned too, because I know we only have a little bit longer, I've just written a 3rd book. The Omnipresent series is going to end up being a series of 5 books. Colors of Heaven is a separate book that's also going to have a 2nd book after it. And I'm in the process of writing book number 4 for the Omnipresent series, which is Omnipresent Gnome, Gnome, place like home, because of another experience that I had and ran into some elementals. But anyway, 111 Omnipresent 111 Becca Dawn Drive is about a townhouse that I was kind of just thrown into, that I actually had to live in this time for a year. The other house, I had another place to go, thank God, so I didn't have to live in it. I never moved in. But this one, I was in a hurry to find someplace reasonably priced, which good luck finding that today. And I found this townhouse that was newly remodeled. And I went with my deposit and my application to give it to the manager on the spot and sign the lease. So I only had 10 minutes to walk through the house. And because everything looked okay, it was in a decent neighborhood type thing. And here I am, a single mom, going to be moving there with my daughter. I'll take it. The price is right. So I never actually went in there with my feelings on, so to speak, and my second, ability of second sight. I was in a hurry to get through. So as I'm taking boxes over to the house, I noticed that the refrigerator was filthy. The inside of the oven was dirty. There were still chemicals all over the toilet seat where no one had cleaned the toilet seat. And I called the management company and I said, this house is supposed to be move-in ready, and I'm not even going to take a shower in the shower until you clean this. I'm not going to clean up somebody else's, stuff. I don't know what diseases and so they finally ended up having to put me in touch with the maid that was supposed to have cleaned the house. And I'm driving there with boxes full of stuff, and I get this call. And just to back up a little bit, that day I was putting clothes away in the closet since I couldn't put anything away in the kitchen or the bathroom because it wasn't clean. So I was trying to put away things that I could put away. And in the doorway, I see this little girl standing there, white dress, brown hair pulled back, big bow, and she's just standing in the doorway. She had those cute little button-sized little those shoes. And I looked at her and I said, hi. And she kind of was looking over her shoulder and immediately took off, like running, scared from something, which I found out what it was afterwards. So anyway, I get this call from the lady. I'm on my way back there, and she says, I know this is going to sound crazy, but do not move into that townhouse. And I'm like, what?
Too late.
I've already signed the lease. I'm moving my stuff in there. She said, no. She said, that whole building is haunted, but your apartment is the worst one, and the one next door to yours is there's something. There's something evil in that house. And I said, well, I saw the little girl, and she says, it's not the little girl is there, but it's not the little girl. She said, it's the mumbling man, the skinny man with the black eyes that lingers around upstairs. And I said, I heard mumbling in the kitchen, but I thought that because the kitchen window faced the parking lot, that maybe it was somebody trying to talk low on their phone. Well, I met the mumbling man, and I have a picture that I took myself I've never seen a naked ghost before. And even at the time that they come to you to retrieve you, yes, they were clothes because nobody wants to see mom naked coming to collect you to help you cross over. You'd be like, Mom, please put on some clothes. So they do show up in clothes. And this is the first time I've seen a naked ghost. And this ghost was going from townhouse to townhouse. There were 10 units connected side by side. And he was pulling down women's covers during the nighttime and crawling in bed with them.
Oh, no.
Talk about creepy. And the thing that's ironic is this picture of him. Here he is going from townhouse to townhouse, naked, willing to show himself like a flasher. But when it came time to take a picture of him, he's literally covering his Johnson. That's the only he's got his hands.
Now you're modest.
Yeah, and all of a sudden it's like, get that. But he would go next to my bed and he would tap, 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 tap hard on the nightstand so that I knew it wasn't like water dripping from somewhere.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I would ignore it and I would pretend like I was sleeping, and I'd feel my covers starting to creep down, and I'd pull them up. And then I would hear the tap, tap, tap again and do it. And of course I used an F-bomb, and I'm like, you need to get the F-bomb out of my house. You know what I'm saying? You are not, you are not invited here. You are not supposed to be here. And so with that, I had to learn that with houses that are connected, that a lot of times when you go in to clear them, the spirit will just exit to the other apartment, upstairs, downstairs, either side of the walls, because they're really inhabiting the whole building. There's some spaces they like better than others. But so I had to learn a way to not only clear it, and when I clear places, I use a fire component. Also, sage, if it's a demon, it tickles it, it pisses us off. Sage is not strong enough to take care of demons. I'm sorry, dragon's blood works better. And there are some other things that even work better than that. But I use a fire component so that I give the spirit an opportunity to leave. If they choose not to leave because they are moved around in the energy of the air blowing and things like that, they're sucked into the pan because the pan sucks in the oxygen, and they get stuck in a sticky component in the bottom of the pan. And of course, then you have a ritual for getting rid of it. Yeah. So anyway, so we had to do this. And of course they came back because I didn't know about blocking off the walls. So after I learned that taking salt with a stone and putting it in all four corners creates that force field. And then you put salt across like the windowsills and the doorway. But the thing is you need to make sure that all of them are out, because otherwise you're blocking them in. So, it's not something that you just want to do on your own. You really need to have somebody there that knows what they're doing so that you don't. And people, I'm not recommending that you do this fire component at your house. You need to have somebody that knows what they're doing, because it can blow back on you. They can immediately put it out. All of a sudden it'll go out like put something over it just out of the blue. You've got a fire 4 feet high and then it just stops. So when you're doing work with these benevolent things or darker energy, souls, they can play with you. So you have to have somebody help you with it. It's not something that you want to do on your own. Most people would drop the pan and run out of there with some of those things that happen. But that's what that book is about. All of my books have a self-help section in the back. With that book too, there was a period of time where I started to communicate with the neighbors. And I had people coming to my house with towels and shampoo in their hair. You got to come to my house. So I'm like giving out dragon's blood and all kinds of stuff. And, you know, everybody was only living 3 and 6 months and they'd move out and break their leases. But so I put self-help sections in the back of all of my books. The first book is how to determine whether you have an entity in your house and what to do. The second one talks about how to clear your house, not with the fire component. You need to reach out to me for that if you need that part, but if it's other things, how to get them out. If it's just a disembodied soul or dog or elemental or something like that.
Mhm.
And as I mentioned, the care section in the back of the Colors of Heaven talks about end of life directives. The 111 Becca Dawn Drive is going to go into the force field and the safety areas where you put it up for the walls to block everything so that your space is completely sealed off from any other spiritual activity. Because if you're an empath, your light is much brighter. And a lot of times, even disembodied souls are attracted to you because they think that you're an angel, you know, and they lose their way sometimes. So they're attracted to you and your energy, and they might come from other people's apartments and say, oh, this person, their light is bright. They, you know, there might be an angel or somebody that can help me. And then they kind of end up hanging out with you. So, you know, it's important to be aware of how to do those things. And like I said, I'm writing the fourth book right now, which is very, very interesting too. I know that we're running close to time. I did inherit a house. My sister passed away in June of last year, and I inherited her house. And I found my entire family actually has passed. So my mother, father, both of my sisters and my brother are on the other side. And I'm the last one left out of my immediate family. I do have a half sister and half brother. But anyway, I inherited her house that we thought was haunted. And when I went through it with the traditional means, nothing worked. And there was this little 3-foot being that liked to drop F-bombs. And it liked to call me. My name was F-bomb, F-bomb, F-bomb. Only it had F-bomb you, F-bomb you, F-bomb you. And that was my name, F-bomb you, F-bomb you. And that very quickly, and he would state it. And it turned out that he was a fae that was seen not only by me, by my son at the same time, but we also had paranormal groups come forward and verify that it was active in the house as well. The thing about fae is they don't leave. You leave or you make nice. So we ended up making nice. He's turned out to be an asset to our family. The yard is actually enchanted. It's not haunted. It's a beautiful, some of the grid work that he's done in triangles with crystals and stones for vortexes and portals that he's created for night fae and different things to come through there. I actually have pictures that I'm putting in that book that were taken on the property.
Right.
So it's turned out to be something quite wonderful. And I'm writing 2 additional books branched off of that one, and then a 5th one at the end for the Omnipresent series. So I've got a lot going on.
That's absolutely incredible. I'm so happy that you're doing this work, because there's so many people out there that, I mean, we've all worked with, that don't really understand what's happening to them, and that there are so many different levels that are going on perhaps simultaneously, and they don't really understand it. So writing a book like the books that you write, because you deal with all of that, is just, I mean, that's such a blessing, because honestly, people are so convinced about what they're experiencing because they watch it on TV. And it's just, you know, there's so much out there, and I'm so happy that you're doing this. I mean, it's going to benefit all of us, honestly, right?
Well, thank you so much for that. You know, I don't watch a lot of TV, and people are like, oh, well, did you read this book or did you see that show? And I don't want to be influenced by anything. I mean, and that, you know, I want to be able to tell it like what I've experienced. Doesn't mean that other people don't experience it differently. Doesn't mean that anybody's wrong, you know, because theirs might be different than mine. But this story of Omnipresent, Known Place Like Home it turns out to be it's going to be a beautiful series where it connects the Fae again with the human realm, especially with these dimensional changes that we're going through right now, where we're elevating that veil that, I mean, they live paralleling us simultaneously, and that veil that separates us is going to efface. We're going to be able to see them again. They're going to be able to be helpers to us again as they were once before. And of course, we'll be of a mindset that won't be like they used to be. I mean, even the Indians used to fire the puck wedgies up to the giants to feed them so that they wouldn't eat the people from their tribe. So there was a lot of betrayal and things like that. And, you know, Bob brings a lot of gifts. He talks about the people of the water and the crystalline cities and how mermaids actually materialize as whales in the water. And he also talks about things like seeds. When you're planting them, if you expectorate on them, that these seeds can actually analyze your saliva, and anything that you have a deficit in within your body, when you plant that seed, that plant will grow what you need in it, so that when you eat it, yes, I mean, these are things, I mean, how do you, I mean, I feel so honored that I'm being given these things. I mean, he told me that. So I've never tried it. It hasn't been scientifically checked out, but I'm sure that somebody can start doing it. You know what I'm saying? But to do that, who knew that a seed has the ability to do that? You know what I mean? So, and he's told me so many things. I've had night fae come to the property. I'm telling you people, I've got pictures of these things. I've taken them with my own cameras. And the thing is a lot of times with the paranormal, people mistake these little things that are 3 foot tall and under as children. He followed me to the event at the I went to the Gettysburg Bash, and I had one lady come by and she said to me, "There's a little boy with you." And I'm like, yeah, there is, because he's a male, but he's tiny, you know, so they assume that he exudes masculinity. They do have the sexes. And then I had another one come over who was aware of him, that had been a remote viewer that had come into the house remotely. I had 2 of them do it, one from Florida, the other one was in South Carolina, and the house is in Louisiana. But both of them told me similar things. And he said, "You know, Bob's sitting in that chair right there with you." And I said, "Yeah, I know." And he's kind of sitting there and his little feet are going like this. He was watching everybody. And I call him Bob because in the Fae realm, they will not give you their name like Rumpelstiltskin, because it's considered a power over them. But he was willing, once he got to know us, how, you know, to give his name, but it was like blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, look, there is no way I'm going to remember blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, how about if we just call you something like Jim or Bob? And he said Bob would be fine. But the whole story evolves around this rock that my sister had inadvertently carried into the house that belonged to him, which is why he was creating a lot of nasty towards the family and in the house and making it seem haunted. But that's a whole nother story. And I know that we're getting close to time.
I was going to actually ask if you would be, how you would feel about coming back onto our show even next week. And
I would
love to hear some more stories and continue this conversation. If you're up for that, we would love to have you.
Oh, well, I would love to come back on, and we'll definitely get that worked out. Yeah, I would love to definitely do that. I want to make people have the awareness of things. And anyway, I don't want to keep going on because I know that we're coming to the end. But people can reach out to me too if they need to. My website is www.lynnmonet.com. It's LYNNMONET, like the painter.com. I do have an email there. Yes, I do still answer them. And granted, I'm sorry, it takes me sometimes weeks to get to them because I get so many. But I do that. I also just finished a segment on Gaia with George Norrie on Beyond Belief that is currently streaming on Gaia, if anybody would like to watch that. And yeah, you can find me all over the internet. I'm bopping around. So
and I did put all your information into the description box too. So people just need to you can click right on the link and it'll take you right to Lynn as well.
Yes. And some of my books are sold on Amazon. Some of them are not. I'm kind of shying away from Amazon because Amazon likes money, but you know, I mean, and it's not about the money, but it's just, so I'm kind of, some of my books you can only get on my website, and other ones you can get both places through Amazon. If you live outside of the country, I recommend that you purchase it from Amazon because the shipping, they can do it for free and it's so much cheaper.
Mhm.
If you're within the United States or Canada, because it's not that expensive, I also still do minimized shipping or free shipping depending on where it's going. But then I can autograph it for you and personalize it, and it does come directly from me. So if you want to out of the country have it personalized, you just have to understand that the postage gets a little pricey, but I'll be happy to do that for you too, and it's cheaper on my website. So definitely reach out to me if you need or would like to purchase one of my books.
Well, thank you so much, Lynn. And again, we'll hopefully next week we'll work it out. See if we can bring you back on right away. We'd like to do it immediately.
I would love that. Yeah, I would love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for watching. And again, all of Lynn's details are in the description box below. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next week.